Okay, so today I've got a small job. I've got to plaster this, solid plaster, well with lime plaster, and board and plaster that ceiling. Now, the product I'm going to use is this. It's called WYKAMOL Renovation Plaster. Now apparently it says it's a cement / lime based plaster, and as this, it's a listed building. The roof was leaking, all the coping stones on the roof was leaking for years, and apparently the problem's been fixed. There's a little bit of moisture there, but it's very time sensitive, so even though there's moisture still in the bricks, apparently the job can't wait and it needs to be done. So as per the instructions, I'm just going to mix a ratio of 1:1 SBR, prime all this brickwork, and then apply this renovation plaster. It's quite thick, so I'm going to have to build up the depth in 2 coats. It's about 1.5 inches thick, to be fair. I'm probably going to give this 2 coats of SBR. I'm going to brush it on. I'm going to brush it instead of roll it because I want it to get into all the mortar joints. Again, it's I can't feel that it's wet, but apparently there is moisture in it. This product is like a lightweight product. And you can get the depth out of it quite quick, and apparently in 48 hours you can put the top coat on. And the top coat is, what's it called? I forget the name. But again, it's another WYKAMOL. It's a WYKAMOL high impact lime finish. So I'm going to PVA on this wall. I'll PVA this wall and I'll come back once it's done. It's hard to see, but all this area is bone dry. The SBR sucked straight into it and it's dry to the touch. But up here, up there, that's actually quite wet. Same here, that's quite wet. So there definitely is moisture in the top of the moisture in the top of the bricks, but again, apparently the job is quite time sensitive, and I'll just hold the phone. Yeah, it's quite time sensitive, and they need to get in within 2 weeks. Now, I have said this. I've never used it before, but apparently you can finish coat within 48 hours with its own product, with the high impact. Where is it? So, do not recommend overcoating with multi-finish normal gypsum plaster. Instead, they recommend the high impact plaster finish should be left for a minimum of 24 hours before applying a decorative finish. So hopefully within, let's just say, a week of me doing this, yes, there's moisture there, they know about that, but they're comfortable with me doing it with the moisture in the wall. And apparently I did make a few phone calls. This stuff, even though it's got cement in it, it is breathable and it will allow the moisture to come through because it's a lime-based product. Hopefully the SBR will hold some of the moisture back, and apparently the coping stones on the roof have all been sorted. Apparently it was like a swimming pool on the roof, which is where the big issue was. If anyone's used this product, do you rate it? I don't know, tips? So you can see, salt inhibiting damp resistant plaster. You can actually see here, you can see the effervescence coming through. It's hard to see, but it does go up. Now this has been plastered with just normal gypsum multi-finish, which I was told I'm allowed to do. But for some reason on this part, they don't want me to dot and dab a plasterboard on. I did say I can, instead of dabbing the plasterboard on with plasterboard adhesive, I could use it's almost like an expanding foam. I can use an expanding foam to stick the plasterboard on, and that will not allow the damp to bridge through the foam into the board. Whereas if I used normal plasterboard adhesive, you'd get the moisture coming through the brickwork and bridging through the dabs. So yeah, apparently this I have to use lime, but this I was allowed to use gypsum multi-finish and all of that. Don't know why, just following spec. You probably can't see this up here. There's 2 bricks that were supposed to be put in before I got here, but to be fair, I've got here a day early and it's not been sorted yet. So up here, I've just got to put 2 bricks in here. Now, I don't actually have any mortar, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to bed it in with the gear itself. Yes, I'm aware it's renovation plaster. Luckily I've managed to find a couple of bricks and I've just cut this one down. I'm going to bed it in with renovation plaster. No, it's not ideal, probably. Again, I've never used the stuff. And should you bed bricks in with render? No, but it's only 2 bricks, and luckily in my van I managed to find a bit of render mesh from a previous job. I'm going to leave it 2 days before I come back to top coat it anyway. You know, if I come back and it's still a bit wet, or if it's sagged or anything like that, I don't think it will have, but if it does, I'll just come back the following day, so it's had like 72 hours to go off. I think it'll be fine. The customer's happy for me to do it. Again, they were supposed to sort it, but they've not, and I'm here now, so I've said I can use the actual product to bed it in, and they're fine with it. Yeah. Bear with me while I just sort this out. I'm not a brickie. I don't claim to be one. I've not got a bricky trowel, so using my plasterer's trowel, And now, just going to get a bit of gear over the top. This gear does actually feel quite nice to use, to be fair. Okay, so the render mesh. Let's put a render mesh over the top. Let's have a look. It's quite thick on the mortar joint there, but what else can I do? Now I'm just going to tie the rest of the wall in. I'll do the rest of the wall. I'm going to leave that bit quite thin for the first coat because I want it to stiffen up before I go back over it. So yeah, let's get on with the actual scratch coat. One thing I will say about this stuff, from mixing up the small bucket, it's dusty. Like it's proper dusty. Like, don't mix this stuff up without a mask. Check my battery's charged, full charge. Yeah. Especially if you're mixing indoors, you need a mask with this gear, you really do. If you've ever done a job like on an old property where you're ripping out a chimney breast and it burns your nose, that's what this feels like. That's a bit too wet for me. Was that a bit more? Let's add a bit more in. I want it quite thick because I'm trying to build up the depth. It's like 1.5 inches. It's not too wet. But you also don't want it dry because it won't stick to the wall. You can't even see. One thing I will say, this stuff feels great to work with. It just wants to stick. Especially with sand and cement, it feels like it doesn't want to stick on the wall. This stuff feels great. With normal plastering, especially if you're right-handed, you're going to work from left to right. But if you're doing any kind of floating, any hard wall, any big areas of bonding, rendering, K-rend, you actually want to work the opposite. You want to work from right to left. And the idea is, when you've got this on, your next one forces into your previous trowel full, into your previous area. So again, up here, put this on, and you force it into the previous area. I might have just found my new favourite product. This stuff's great. Again, start there and force it into your previous area. Force it up and into your previous area. keep finding all the old screws and plugs. I actually thought this was going to be white because it's a lime-based product, but it does have cement in it, so great is. Now, this area, I'm actually keeping it there. I'm trying to keep it below the thickness it needs to be. So although I'm pushing into there, I'm going to come back and take it down just so I can get the extra depth from the second coat. And I want to keep the surface clean. The white, I want to keep it clean. Apologise, I'm bad at this. I've got a camera, I've got a phone and a heater that I'm balancing my phone on. I think I need to invest in a tripod. Right, we're all on. Give me a sec. As you can see, I've left it below to get the second coat on. And also these, this and this, they were about 70mm. And I'm not confident in saying this gear can go to 70mm depth. So what I'm going to do is get the corner of my gauger and just dig it in and take out some of the depth. Again, I want to keep the surface clear, because this is what I'm going to have to blend into. And what we want to do now, it's all on, is rule it with the Derby. So I'll stick you back there. I really need a tripod. What do you think? So, got my Derby. Whenever you're doing this, you want to make sure it's nice and straight. And lock down it, make sure it's nice and straight. Because if it's wavy, your wall's going to be wavy. Anything you take off, put back in your bucket. And you also want to do it both ways. So you want to go up, and you also want to go across. We've ruled it all flat. You can see we've left enough depth for the second coat. So it's all flat, and I'll just show you quick. So, look, I'm working over this as well, which is not ideal. Don't fall down there. So now that we've ruled it all off of our straight edge, move the ladders out of the way. It's all nice and flat. Gonna just go over and check your depth. We're going to there. So this is what we're left to get with the second coat. Same on this side. Yeah. Like with all this stuff, you just want to take this off. Take it all off and keep the edge clean. Because if you keep your edge clean, you know then you're taking it back to the wall. You're not taking it back to like this here. If you keep that on there, it doesn't look like a lot, but it's an extra couple of mil that will actually throw your wall out when you come to rule it. So yeah, keep all your edges clean. And now, while I wait for this to dry, I'm going to get on with the ceiling. The reason I'd normally do this first, I'd normally always do a ceiling first, work from top to bottom, sort the ceiling out. Once it's done, then get to this. But I need this to dry. So, got this on first thing. Now I just have to be a bit careful, sort the ceiling out, and then tomorrow I'm going to come back and second coat this, and then in 2 days I'm going to come back and lime finish it. So I've been waiting for this for a couple of hours to firm up, really. For this to firm up, it's kind of hanging out. I think it's hanging out because of the SBR. It's not really pulling in. I did want to get a second coat on it today to build up the depth, but I don't think I'm going to be able to. So I'm just going to board the ceiling. I've got the first board on it, now I'm just going to overboard it because it was double skin. I'm just going to mark out where the joists are, just so I know when I get up there. I'm just going to scratch it into the wall as well. Make it nice and easy for me. Do-do-do. Sometimes, when you don't have an apprentice, you just have to struggle. I forgot to mark the ceiling. So I'm having to guess. Oops. Okay. Okay, so this ceiling is all patched up now. It was double skinned, but it was completely rotten. I've had enough for one day. a nice job, to be fair. It's an old listed building in Manchester. And all that's complete. I did all this about 7 weeks ago. And I've had to stop there because all the effervescence came through. We're back now, it's the next day. All this is pulled in quite well. It actually feels, it's not solid. Let me get this. Here. Yeah, it feels nice and solid, but it also feels a bit soft. Yeah. So yeah, just feel a bit soft. There's obviously still moisture in it, but it's nice and solid. So I'm gonna do a mix. I'm gonna do a big mix. Probably take 3 bags. I put a bag and a half on it yesterday, just on the base coat. This will probably take another 3 bags. And I'll do a mix and we'll get to it. Let's check it. Feels a little bit wet, but yeah, I might put a bit more gear in that. It's a little bit, see, I don't want to open a new bag just to put a handful in. Oh well. A bit more gear. What I've noticed about this stuff, oh shit, I've just broke my mask. What I've noticed about this stuff is the more you mix it, the wetter it gets. You know, a bit like render. I guess that's the cement. But yeah, it was really thick. And it's been stood for 2 minutes. And it's gone wet again. So I was thinking I probably needed a handful. Half a bag in it. Another half a bag and it's still wet. So I'm just going to try and use it as it is. I want it quite thick because I need to build up a lot of depth. Give me a sec. Yeah, I want it relatively thick because I need to build up. Where is it? This depth. But the thicker it is, the drier it is. Again, I've never used the product, so I don't really know what I can get away with. But I do want to get all the depth. I do want to get all the depth in this coat. So, I'll go for it. If it starts to sag, then, you know, worst case scenario, I might have to just take it back off and thicken it up. Can we see? Yeah. I don't think it will, but yeah, it does feel nice and solid. Seems to be holding its body quite well. Which is good. I'll turn you this way a bit. Better? Yeah. seems to hold its body quite well on the wall. So it's hard to see, but I am forcing it into the wall quite hard. You're gonna really push, really force it right into the wall to get it to really key into those scratch marks. And then if it's the same as ordinary render, once it's on, you don't want to mess with it too much, because if you mess with it, you'll start to pull the moisture out and it'll blow. It'll start to pull away from the substrate. So I want to put it on nice and thick, kind of cross trowel it a little bit and leave it. I'm going to rule it all back with the straight edge anyway, so it's actually better if it is too thick. It says on the bag, it does say, I'm going to put it on in thicknesses of 10mm per coat. Excuse me. So you really want to force it into the previous area. as best you can. Again, putting quite a lot of pressure on the wall. You can see that's the thickness we're kind of getting. So I'll just carry on. It's a nightmare working with the phone, just a phone. It is such good stuff, I've got to admit. I'd say it feels like cement-based bonding. But if anyone knows, if anyone's ever mixed cement into bonding, it'll go off in about 1 minute. So I'll show you the thickness I've gone to there. I've put it on quite thick, and obviously this, I'm going to the wall. I'm just pulling it back to the wall. That's the thickness I need to be. So I'm putting it on way thicker than it needs to be because I'm going to rule it back. The reason, there's two reasons really, from what I know. There's two reasons you put it on way thicker than you need to. Reason one is because it's easier to put it on super thick and then rule it back with your straight edge and take all the excess off. It's easier to do that than to put a tight coat on and add little bits where you need. And the second reason is, while all this is on the wall really thick, where the back of the new stuff, what I'm putting on now, is touching the old stuff I put on yesterday, that's already pulling in, and that's already starting to adhere to the wall, and the moisture's being taken out. So the back of it is already starting to adhere. So when you rule it off, you're not really doing, once it's on, you don't want to mess with it. If you put it on really thin and start messing around and putting little bits on building up the thickness, you start to play with it and you start to bring out all the moisture, and that will blow it from the wall, and it'll create like air pockets in the wall. So you put it on really thick, the back of it starts to pull in, firm up before the front of it, and all you're doing is you're pulling off the wet from the front, the excess wet, and you're leaving the back relatively untouched and unmessed with. That's my understanding of it anyway. when you're working, especially without a radio, what goes through your mind? You know what's in my mind right now? Is it like a little meme from years ago, a chimpanzee riding on a Segway? That's what's in my mind, and I can't stop repeating in my head. Do 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 do. People say if you've ever got a song in your head or something stuck in your head, you need to listen to it in order to get it out. You want to make sure you don't get any bubbles. The reason you force it in quite hard is so that you minimize the risk of getting bubbles behind the stuff that you put on. Like here. If I go into that, if I just push it up and leave it, there's a chance there's bubbles. So when it's really thick, it's good practice to go up it and then come back down with similar pressure. Now you don't want to push all the way down because you get a really heavy build up with the stuff you're pulling down and you'll pull it off the wall. So put it on and then push it down, come back up, push it down, come back up. You get quite a heavy build up, and that stuff you'll be forcing in as well. Now it doesn't have to be up and down. You'll often see me just go left and right. And it's for the same reason. Partly because you want to cross trowel whatever you put on. You don't want to just apply everything up. Don't apply up and only up. You want to cross trowel it. And that not only ensures that you get it definitely flat, but it ensures that any bubbles behind there, you squeeze them out in all directions. We're all on. Straight edge. Again, I checked it yesterday, but you do want to check down it just to make sure no one's lent anything against it overnight. Wrong way. These are okay. They're just a little bit small for my liking. I prefer the big feather edge. It's like a 2.4, and it's actually tapered. This is quite thin. It's easier to bend, whereas the feather edge is tapered into a point almost. And I've always used them, but I've started using this recently. So I can actually feel that while the surface is still quite wet, I can feel that it's already pulled in on the substrate. It's pulled in. show you where it's not thick enough. Let's have a look. Oh, I dropped the phone. So you can actually see right there, it's not thick enough, but all the rest you can see where I've scraped across. So now, try and get my straight edge. Still got a bit more depth to build up, but when you look up here, it's quite flat. Go all the way to the wall. It's quite flat, but there is places. Let's see here. Yeah, I need to build that out. Let's see this. There is a knack to it. The more you do this, the more you... It's like muscle memory. The more you float and set, the steadier you get when doing it. And it's the same with when you plaster. The more you plaster, you can start to feel it through your hand, through the trowel in the wall. You feel it where it needs a bit more attention. And it's exactly the same with this. It's just a different movement, but the more you do it, you get used to staying steady. And the same rule applies. You want to rule it up, and you also want to rule it across to guarantee your wall is flat. If you're only ruling it up, or even with your trowel, if you only ever trowel it up, there's a chance. Yeah, if you only ever rule it up and you never cross it, there's a chance you just set the ridges in. You can still just about see the ridges. So if you keep ruling and if you keep troweling up and you only ever go that way, all you're going to do is set those ridges in. So by going across it, if you get ridges that way, same with plastering, you can't get them out by doing that. You have to get them out by going the opposite way. Right, we've ruled it all back, and I just need to add depth. There's a big one here, but if you're adding a bit more depth, because you need to, and you feel the whole thing moving, it means you're putting a bit too much pressure on. So just on the second build-up, when you're just adding bits to areas where it needs it, you're not forcing it in this time. You're doing it quite light. Really lightly add your second layer. Because at this stage, you're not concerned about getting your gear to stick to the substrate. You're concerned, you've already done that in the first coat, which is why you apply loads of pressure. All you're doing now is building up where it needs. And you want to leave the back of it, where it's touching the substrate, relatively untampered with. And the more you play with it, it'll start to feel heavier. you'll start to mess with it and it'll feel really heavy on your trowel. And that's because it's actually pulling away from the backing. Same thing when you're ruling it back again. You're not putting any pressure. Don't apply any pressure to the wall when you're ruling it. You're going to keep the straight edge nice and flat. You don't want it like this. Sorry. You're going to keep it nice and flat, so you're going up the wall flat. You don't want it like this, because that you've got more chance of digging into the wall and creating ripples on your way up. Nice and flat, and all you're doing, you're not pushing in. You're just lifting up nice and gentle. If anyone's got this far, it's going to be quite a long video. Just do me a favour and just click the like button. Or dislike if you don't like it. You know, if you feel like I'm doing everything wrong. Or you don't like pasty white legs. People have an issue with guys' legs these days. I'm okay with it. Ooh. Yeah, I've noticed that if you're just watching a video these days, you don't need to be subscribed to the channel. You don't need to subscribe to that channel in order for it to feed you them videos over and over again. So, maybe someone knows more than me, but I don't see the benefit in subscribing to a channel. For the viewer, obviously for the person making the content, more subscribers means, you know, it kind of shows that people are interested in your content, more incentive to make more content. But for the viewer, the YouTube algorithm is going to show you the video anyway, just because it shows you what it thinks you want to watch, regardless of being subscribed. And because of that, one thing I've started doing is actually subscribing to the channels I watch. And every single video, especially on a small channel, I just click like. Because it makes absolutely no difference to the viewer to click that. You're not any more likely to get spam from what I've found, and putting a comment or a like on a video doesn't affect you in any way. It's a click. But yeah, if you got this far, if you don't mind, put a thumbs up, thumbs down, and a subscribe if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, I've got the derby really flat on the wall, and I'm not pushing in whatsoever. All I'm doing is placing it on the surface and ruling across with zero pressure. One thing I have realised, I do a lot of hospital work, and one thing I've realised, so I do a lot of site work. New plasterers, they don't know how to float and set, they don't know how to solid plaster. A lot of them, they don't dot and dab. They won't board because the board is board. And all they do is skim, just over skim. Over skim fresh boards and bonding chases, But yeah, they can't do this. I'm not having a dig at them, but I don't know. It just doesn't pay, especially on site, to pick up extra skills. It's very easy these days to get to get de-skilled on building sites. Joiners will know the same. Like second fix joiners, all they do is go in and fit skirts, go in and fit architraves, and never fit a door. They'll never do trusses, floor joist, traditional roofs. They don't do any of that. And you can very quickly get de-skilled by working on building sites these days. So I'm 36 now, and I kind of realised that I'm like the last of like my age group, especially for plastering, and other plasterers can tell me if they agree or not. My age group is one of the last plasterers that we learned from like old school plasterers who, you know, use steel trowels and don't mess around with flexes and straight edge, speed skims. If you're a young plasterer, let me know. This has been ruled off now. We're all pretty flat. I'll try and show you. Actually, I've taken too much off it there. Right there, I've taken too much. Let's have a look. Well, it's not too bad. See there, we're touching the wall here, and on the other side, we're touching the opposite side, and all the middle is filled out, so we know we're perfectly flat there. Exactly the same here. We're touching there, touching here. The middle's perfectly filled out, and we're looking at the top. And again, you want to put your ruler on it every direction, just so you're really sure. This can even come down a bit. See here? That's a bit too high there. And this is too low. So again, we just need to go over and add little bits around the wall where it needs it. And then we need to leave it for a good few hours with this stuff. I've noticed this stuff does tend to hang out. Great stuff though. I almost forgot, we need to scratch this to put a key in it, ready for the next coat. I've got the ceiling on, and I was just feeling it, and it's still wet. It's definitely, you can leave a fingerprint in it, but it's at the perfect stage to rub up. Now, I can see there, I didn't put enough gear there earlier, but that's fine. What I can do, I can try and drag the rest around into it almost. and reduce it. I only have 2 screws in. I've had it before where I've had 4 or 5 screws in the top, but I feel like it drags and it pulls too much. So I like to have just 2 screws. And where are we looking? You barely want the screws showing through. You barely want the screws showing through because you don't want to do really deep channels, because that'll cause bubbling on your top coat. That'll make bubbles in your top coat. Just enough to leave lines all over your work. Here we go. I don't actually know what the camera sees, but we'll find out in the edit. You want to pull it right into the corner. Big sideways figure of 8 motion. And you see this? Well, there's nothing there. I'm going to take all this from the side and throw it into it. Give me a second. There we go. Throw that in there. And just squash it in. Carefully squash it in. Now we have a nice key over the entire wall. You can see here, and keep it nice and flush with the edges. Yeah, so I'm gonna call this half of the video here because it's been a long video. It's gonna be about an hour long. And then I'm gonna make a part 2 when I actually come to the lime top coat. And then I need to lime plaster all this. But that's gonna be in the second video in the part 2. But yeah, if you made it this far, if you don't mind, just send me a little bit of feedback, please. Because I get a few views, like when I say a few, I mean like 50 to 100. But you know, I don't get any feedback of retention time. So yeah, even if you can leave a tiny little bit of feedback, I'd appreciate it. Cheers, see you in the part 2.